Welcome to the Oh So Spurs podcast, where we've got some exciting topics to talk about today. Pochettino has slagged us off. We've signed James Maddison. We've signed Lucas Moura's heir to his throne. We're looking at potentially 2 or 3 centre-backs, a link to another fullback. We've had some great interviews from Ange and up the Spurs. We've got a full house of us today. Deej will be joining slightly later, but at the moment we've got Si. How are you?
Hello, mate. Yeah, doing well. Good to see you all.
Good to see you too. Johnny?
Yeah,
How
I'm
are you,
great,
mate?
thank you. Yeah, very good, thank you. How are you?
Yeah, doing well. Thank you. Doing very good. And of course, we've got Stu. How are you?
All good, evening all.
Good evening. Let's start with Pochettino's comments because that's the fresh off the press. And for anyone who hasn't read those comments, I'm going to read them out so you know exactly what he said about us. So Pochettino has said this evening that it was, just me, Johnny. Yeah, Pochettino said it was easy to say yes to Chelsea. We'll work hard, play in the way fans can enjoy football. The history of Chelsea is to win and be at the top. In the last 10, 12, 15 years, Chelsea is the greatest team in England. Do you guys think that was a bit of a pot shot at Spurs or him just doing what he needs to do to win over a new fan base? What are your guys' thoughts? Anyone particularly, passionate about this one, or do you not care?
I don't really care, to be honest with you. I've kind of gotten over the whole Poch thing, and I guess it's disappointing, but at the same time, if you're Poch, you kind of understand he's gone to one of our biggest rivals, and I suppose he's got to ingratiate himself with the supporters. So it kind of really makes sense that he's going to say that sort of stuff to. It's not. Yeah, I genuinely actually don't care. I didn't really want him back. I would have been happy enough if he did come back, but we've moved on so far from that point, and I think just like really wouldn't be nice for him to come to the lane and to beat us. That would be difficult. I wouldn't like that, but otherwise. Yeah, he's got to say it, doesn't he? I mean, you'd say that. Well, maybe you wouldn't, but if you wouldn't be the Chelsea manager, but if you had a job, we wouldn't go to Chelsea in the first place. I suppose that's probably the most disappointing thing about Pochettino. But other than that, he hasn't directly had a go at Spurs. He's just kind of suck up to them.
Yeah, and I think. Yeah, it's easy to say yes to Chelsea because Spurs didn't even pick the phone up, mate. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
So have some of that to start with. You weren't even wanted back here. We were saying for ages on the pod that we didn't think it was the heart move, not the head move, if he came back anyway. And to your point, Johnny, he's got to double down. He was ex-Spurs. He's gone to Chelsea. They hate us. He's got to go there and show that he's fully...
Yeah.
You know, he's fully on board with them. He's going to do the job with them. Mate, it's all just bullshit, isn't it? I mean, what happens behind closed doors is the big thing. He's got to come out on that charm offensive, and he's done it. And I couldn't give a shit. He was long gone for me earlier on in the year. Long gone.
Yeah, I think the same thing. I mean, he's got to say that, particularly with his past with us. So he's got to go, I think, a little OTT just to kind of ingratiate himself with the fans. And as you guys said, I didn't want him back. I don't get me wrong. I loved those middle years with him. I mean, they were the closest I felt to the club in decades. But I do think our fan base has put him a little bit on a pedestal, and I think he's a little overrated. I think a better manager would have actually won silverware when he, with the squad that he had.
Yeah, those rose-tinted glasses are still on a lot of people at Tottenham, aren't they? I mean, he gave us some wonderful times, but we forget that actually, the back end of it wasn't very good. The back end of it, where he wouldn't commit to us,
2 years of flirting.
Exactly. Yeah, got his tits out all over the place for anyone who'd have a look at him. So, I mean, it was wonderful. Yes, Madrid was brilliant, but that even papered over the massive cracks that were there, I mean, that bought him more time. If we hadn't have got to the final that year, he'd have been gone at the end of the season, I think.
Yeah. I'm slightly more critical of him. I really enjoyed that spell, but I feel he was circumstances aligned with him in the sense that he came off the back of that awful period of managers that, Redknapp was great, but that whole Sherwood period, and it felt like we were about to go backwards all over again. But he did inherit Jan Vertonghen, Kyle Walker, Moussa Dembele, Christian Eriksen, Hugo Lloris, and Harry Kane in their peak. And I just feel that and he signed 27 players on top of that. And he coached some of those players really well. But as we discussed before, Walker and Trippier got better without him.
Yeah.
There are examples of players that got a lot better with him as well. But I just feel he brought modern coaching into the game for us, into the club for the first time. You remember that book, New World, just to show like how he took us from early 2000s football into the modern kind of era. And I think he did that really, really well. But he didn't need to say Chelsea are the biggest club in London. He could have just said Chelsea are one of the biggest clubs in the world and it's an honour to be here.
But that's where he's had to go on. He's had to go on the offensive for those fans, though.
Exactly.
That's why he's done it. He's got to get the Chelsea fans on side, so he's got to look like he's having a dig at us. Whether it was a dig or not, again, who cares really? But there's one fly in the ointment with Pochettino, and it's the niggling question about what would have happened if we'd have had that summer where we didn't invest and we actually invested. That is the thing that people couldn't let go.
But even then, Si, if you read his book, he turned down offers of players. And, as Jim was saying, he inherited a strong squad.
Oh, he did,
and
no
as
doubt.
his influence got stronger and he had more and more say, our squad actually got worse and worse. I think, yes, there were a lot of things. Yes, he wasn't backed, properly. We were spending all our money on the stadium. But there's nothing to say that if we'd have spent money, we'd have spent it better than we did on Lo Celso, Ndombele, and Sessegnon.
Yeah, I get
and
that.
Sanchez.
That's just the one unanswered question for people, though, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is, and
if we would have
away.
overinvested at that time, would we have kicked on? We don't know. We'll never know. But that's the niggling question in the back of people's minds, isn't it?
Yeah, I agree. Considering we were so close to we were in a few finals with him, particularly the Champions League final.
Yeah.
We were in title races, and people would say, if you dropped that, I think what the people who don't like the ownership would say is, and we don't want to dive into that on this podcast, but I know we were broke building the stadium, and that's the right thing to do at the time, but if the passion was there and the amount of effort that went into making sure we had the world's best stadium had gone into making sure we have the world's best players, they would have found a way to have a modern recruitment structure and found some money under the sofa just to get us over the line. But they were just all eyes on the infrastructure. But anyway, the past is the past.
The only other thing I say about Pochettino is, and it maybe is like looking back, in hindsight, but we've been a little bit more critical analysis of how he evolved and how I think it's like Klopp last season, just sort of feel there's a certain level of stillness creeping in anyway, because he was there for over 5 years, and clearly, especially the away form was horrific in that last in 2019. Yeah. But I just sort of think back to the Amsterdam game, and of course it was an insane second half, and the celebrations at the end were like we were all doing it ourselves wherever we were. But I kind of sort of think like it was almost like we'd done the job to get to the final. It was like a good enough sort of thing. I'm not saying that we just accepted the fact, but it was sort of like we've already overachieved, which is probably fairly true. Yeah. But when you're in the bloody final, you want to win it, and I sort of think that there was a bit of that with Pochettino. Like, what was it? Is it? It's not just because it's the name Tottenham Hotspur that we're just absolutely crap when it comes to the really, really big moments to the finals. Yeah. Just seemed to be like no matter what happened, I never really went into any of those finals thinking, like I really feel we're going to do the job. And I know that Postecoglou's not like taken the reins of a match yet, but just his whole aura and belief that he instills, I think, already makes me sort of feel, do you know what, this guy, he only wants to fucking win, and it's like, I think that's something else. I think that I'm really glad. I think Pochettino, totally agree with what you guys have said, but he's the past, and we've got a really exciting, future now, hopefully.
Yeah, move on.
I think the thing I love, go on, sorry, Stu.
I was going to say, popping on that, he's a typical Aussie, isn't it? You can't imagine him celebrating a semi-final. He won't celebrate until until it's done.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I fully agree. The thing is that I'm moving on to Ange. The reason I think he's such a great cultural fit for us is the best managers have always felt grateful to be here for the opportunity, and they've gone, I know what resources I have, and I'm going to work within that. There's no expectation that everyone needs to bend over backwards to change things for that person. And I feel that Ange is like that. He knows what he's getting himself into, and he thinks he can win something with the resources he's got. Whereas with Conte and Jose, it was like, look, I'm doing you guys a favour. I'll help you out, but you're going to need to bend over backwards and, really go out of your way to behave differently for this to work. And that, fine. Maybe that's the reason why they were the wrong appointments, and that is on the club for making the wrong appointments. But it feels like we've done that thing we do as Spurs in those cycles. We go through like wrong manager, right manager. So we did the wrong manager 3 times this time. But I think we're at that positive cycle moment now, like we were under Redknapp and we were under Yol and we were under Poch, where the club's back's up against the wall and they need to pull something out of the bag, and they've properly researched this guy. He's just got that leadership skill that is, and Nagelsmann spoke about it. It's 80% how you manage people and 20% the tactics. But Ange hasn't said that out loud, but he very much amplifies that in my view as well. So it's super exciting. And we've kicked it off with such a sensible signing in Maddison. It just seems like, and Wink's going the other way. Is it too good to be true?
What a
is something
fucking
wrong?
steal.
30
Insane.
30 mil net with Winks going the other way. But even on its own, 40 million for a 26-year-old that with his stats that he had last season in a relegated side, and you got Rice being knocked about for 105, 110 million.
Yeah. And
Are
Mason
you
Mount
having a
was 60.
fucking laugh? Jesus Christ. We've absolutely pulled their pants down on that one.
Yeah. And, well, Mason Mount's probably a more comparable signing in the sense that they're both they were both similar lengths on the contract left, and they're English. They have that tax in their price. They play a similar-ish kind of role. But it just seems mad that Man United went over backwards for Mount when Maddison's right. I can't believe that we've managed to pull that off. I thought we were going to mess it up overly negotiating, but it's an extra £10 million in the kitty towards a centre-back as well. It's just brilliant.
If we ever sign a centre-back.
There we go. We'll get onto that one in a bit, Stu.
Yeah. And Deej has just joined us. So it's fantastic. Hey, Deej, how are you, mate?
DJ.
Hi, Deej.
He's just setting up his mic. But we'll dive into some of these players in a bit more detail, because I think we've done Maddison to quite a length in the last pot. That he's what we need. He's the creative midfielder we need. He's going to play further up the field, carry the ball, he can score, he can pick a pass, and we haven't replaced Eriksen since he left. And this guy could be Eriksen for us for the next 5 years on his 5-year contract.
One other stat about Maddison: he drives a chrome blue Lamborghini Urus.
Oh wow!
Because Ben, my boy Ben, saw it outside the snooker club in Coventry about 6 weeks ago when he turned up there for a game, because he started his career at Coventry, didn't he? So there was in the middle of Coventry city centre in this really run down car park outside the snooker hall was this chrome blue Lamborghini Urus.
Deej, welcome, mate. How are you? Oh, he's got some comms issue. You get that sorted out for us. But anyway,
get Johnny to sort it out.
No bother. Only took me 29 episodes to figure it all out, but I'm delighted with myself. Oh yeah.
But we appear to also be in for not one but two centre-backs, which is arguably it is a more important position. It's proven statistically that in any shape of life, it's better to try and improve your weakest position and sort that out than it is to improve your best performer or somewhere in the middle of the park. And centre-back has been our issue for about 4 years now, since Vertonghen and Toby were over the kind of best of their years. So one of them that's very close today, the report saying, is Van der Ven. Stuart, you can pronounce it properly for me. With your Van der Ven, there you go. I think that's pretty close there. There's some interesting stats on him that were posted out today that do kind of imply that he can't be the only one we sign, because even though his carrying ability and his forward passing is a really strong asset for him as a centre-back, he doesn't have great defensive actions. He doesn't perform above average in terms of dual wins percentage-wise, and his progressive passes are kind of, middle of the park as well. He's certainly above Dyer and Tanganga and Sanchez in the stats, but Tapsoba is miles ahead of him in all the areas, really. Do any of us feel this guy's one for the future, or is he one for now? What's your guys' heads at with him?
I think for a big lump, he's a big lump as well, and he's 6'4", I think.
6'4".
And apparently his aerial statistics aren't particularly hot for a guy that size either. But he's a good passer of the ball from what I've read. He's left-sided. He can play left back as well, though he's a bit big for a left back, I think, at 6'4". I don't know how mobile he'll be against some of the quicker wingers.
It's pretty fast,
but
isn't he?
Yeah, he is pretty fast. He's I think he's got a top speed of about 35 kilometers an hour. I think he's hit at some point. So yeah, he can move, but he's young. He's 22. And this is the concern I think about this centre back position, right? It's such a technical space in the Premier League that it takes time for them to settle the centre backs. All of them that you see coming from abroad take time to settle. It's much easier to land on the left wing and be able to play yourself into that position in the Premier League than it is to be exposed against Haaland first game of the season or whatever. So that's a concern, but he looks pretty good. Tapsoba looks very good. His stats compared to Mickey, because we'll just call him Mickey now, right?
Yeah.
He's Mickey from South London. He's he looks a touch of quality. But both of them were in reasonably good defensive sides last year in the Bundesliga as well. I think 6th and 7th in terms of goals conceded out of the whole division, but the two of them.
What do you think, Deej? Welcome back, mate. Do you think that if we only signed Van der Ven, that we'd still be looking quite short, even with Romero, with two at the back? Is Tapsoba, is he the key piece, whereas Van der Ven's more an option for the future who adds good depth? But that's kind of my assumption. Is that fair in your view?
That's kind of how it looks from an outsider's perspective, but Van der Ven, it's not like Van der Ven is like some super green talent who has never played in a top 5 league. Where it's not like we're like Victor Nelson that we were linked with earlier has only really ever played for the biggest club he's played for is Galatasaray. He's played fairly well at Wolfsburg, and it wouldn't be the worst if we just got him. We will buy 2 center backs this transfer window, whether or not that's Van de Ven and Tapsoba or one of the two and Tosin, or maybe it's just some name we haven't even heard yet. But we will buy 2 center backs, especially with the amount of I cannot see us ending the window with 1 center back.
I hope you're right.
I'm a little bit more skeptical, perhaps. Van de Ven's only had 1 season in a top flight division. Before that, he's been at Wolfsburg for 2 years, but the year before I think he played 4 or 5 games. And before that, he was at Volendam, which were the lower league. He wasn't playing in the Eredivisie. So I don't think he's ready to step in as our senior centre-back next to Romero. I think we need a Tapsoba. I think we need someone a bit more, substance to him, and Mickey van der Ven will come along. As he's 22. He's got at least 10 years ahead of him as a centre back. My fear is if it's him and Longley, we're in a whole world of trouble next season.
Yeah, I have to agree that for as good as he is, the whole squad can't function without a commanding. It doesn't have to be Van Dijk, because Van Dijk is special, and that's a stupid observation to say expect something that high, but it needs to be someone that you can say, like you said, Stuart, the senior centre-back. That person who comes straight in, and then Romero suddenly going, what? I'm supposed to be the best guy in this back line.
Yeah.
What on earth? I have to actually pull my finger out now. I can't just get away of just faking a niggle before I've got to play for Argentina. I need to keep my spot because I've got him next to me. And then this young guy, Van de Ven, who looks pretty good as well, who could take my spot. That's the thing. Even with Tosin, he's a good depth player. But I feel like he's kind of like, in a way, City signed Nathan Ake. He's a really good player, but they're not building their defence around the guy.
Yeah.
He's just a really good squad player. And we need that. But with that commanding centre-back is probably the most important position this window.
Yeah. Is it the case that Longley is, although that's gone quiet for a little bit, the asking price that Barcelona will be looking for is so low that he's almost inevitably going to come back to Tottenham? I mean, and if that is the case, then when, like Dee's just talking about two centre backs, is it going to be one of Tapsoba or Van de Ven and Longley as being the two new fellas? In which case, like Stu was saying and yourself, Jim, you would be a bit worried about if there's a situation where we've got an injury, then it's not the strength that we really kind of feel we need. There's obviously Dyer doesn't seem to. There's not much talk that I can hear about Dyer going. It sounds like he's hanging around.
Yeah.
Which probably the majority of supporters wouldn't be too chuffed with. And obviously Tanganga as well. Like there's always been links in the past, but like Milan were linked with him before. I quite like Tanganga. I know he gets a lot of slagging, but he's put in some really good performances for us, as I've said before. I don't know, and I guess there's the sentimental part of him being a Spurs boy as well, that you kind of want him to do well. But if you've got five, Romero plus this Van de Ven, Longley, Dyer, and Tanganga, that doesn't really get you too hopeful. I definitely think if we're going to go for one of them, you'd want it to be Tapsoba for the reasons that I was just saying.
If we do bring back Longley just because he's cheap, then the board are opening themselves up to rightful criticism.
Yeah.
And I hope that they've now learned not to make those mistakes anymore.
It would be such a shame because it's been such a positive start to the window. They've done everything the fans have been demanding they do seems to be happening. And then it would be such a shame to just not take the final, put the final piece of the puzzle together. Just think, we've done a lot, done really well. Maybe Dyer and Longley and Romero will figure it out. That was just such a disappointment.
And I just wonder whether we need to just slightly change the context here as well, because we're not going to be playing that low block where they look exposed as our defence has done for the past 3.5, 4 years. We're going to be playing a much more progressive, higher press, winning the ball further up the field. Look how good Van Dijk looked when Liverpool were playing that high press and winning the ball further up the field and then winning it in midfield, when all he had to do was really marshal that back line, cope with the stuff that was coming over the top and play the ball out. He was never that. He's been exposed a little bit, maybe since the injury as well, but he's been exposed a little bit since that Liverpool midfield's collapsed in front of him. Around defenders look good when they've got a defensive unit that is the team that's playing that high press. And I think that I was reading an article. I think it was a guy that had worked with Postecoglou, and Postecoglou's, his total vision is you start defending as soon as you lose the ball. So the person closest to the loss of possession starts the defensive line. And, that we haven't seen, because what we saw with Conte and Mourinho was lose the ball, drop back to that 2 blocks of 4. And that then just puts so much pressure on the centre-halves. And I wonder whether we just need to change the context and shift the paradigm a little bit about what we're expecting from those centre-halves.
There's definitely an element of truth in that. So I think that last year doesn't reflect the true level of that defence. They're not good enough to go on title charge, but they're not mid-table to lower rubbish that they looked last year. Like, this is the same defenders who got us 4th the year before, albeit we had some miracle results, but they showed that they are top 8 players when they're on form and doing okay. So there's some context.
Romero can play a ball, right? He's a ball-playing centre-half. Longley's a ball-playing centre-half. Mickey Van de Ven is a ball-playing centre-half. So I think, we need to trust that Postecoglou will have some significant input into the type of defenders we want to bring in. So, I think not saying that we don't need any, but I think we need to just change the paradigm a little bit.
Thinking about the you were saying earlier there, Jim, about the fact that the transfer business done so far has been really good to get the critics off the back of the board and stuff. And like obviously kind of struck with Maddison because it was an opportunity that had to be taken, sort of thing, even though it wasn't the priority. Same with the goalkeeper, and I think most fans would be satisfied with the business not paying the 40 million for Raya. But I'm just thinking about the situation. Obviously, we've got an offload an awful lot of players who have come back, and again, I know we talked about this before, but what we haven't really got rid of anyone apart from Winks. So what does it need? Do we need to shift players before we can start spending money on the centre halves, or certainly if we're going to get two? And if we're going to sign Van de Ven for around the 30 million mark, is what I've seen, that's a lot of money for Tottenham to pay for somebody who's a backup or somebody for the future. I can't really imagine that would, if you're paying that for him, you kind of certainly be looking for him to be picking up quite a lot of appearances. So it's going to be interesting to see. But I definitely feel it'd be nice to have a bit more experience in there, especially because whatever about the new system and new manager and the belief and all the coaching that he can give to Romero, and hopefully his game will really come on next season in terms of just his decision making is being less prone to making rash challenges and just kind of daft choices he makes sometimes. I just feel that he still needs, just like Stu said, he still needs somebody beside him who's a kind of a bit of wiser head on his shoulders kind of thing. And a 22-year-old.
That's my fear as well, Johnny.
Go
on, Stu.
I was going to say, I think, you're right. We do need to offload some players if we're going to spend, 70 million on two centre backs. But until now, we've spent about 110 net spend, including Porro and Kulusevski. But if we get rid of, the other players that are linked for only, let's say, low fees, 10 million here, Sessegnon to Forest, 10 million. It's not that much. Galatasaray supposedly looking at Sanchez for another 10 million. If Lo Celso goes to Villa for 20 million, we've quickly recouped 40 million just there, which is centre back. So then we end up with only a net spend of, again, okay, it's only, but 130, 140, which a club of our size should be able to do.
Yeah. But isn't this a fear? This is my fear, and Johnny was alluding to it earlier, that the priorities, and Spurs do this, we tend to get our priorities a little bit in the wrong order. And I feel like if we're now having to sell players, which Alistair Gold released a good article, by the way, on Football London, which basically says Spurs' biggest weakness is selling footballers, not buying them. And I do agree with that. In recent history, that has been the case. Like, we shouldn't be going, right, we've got Maddison, Van de Ven, and a goalkeeper. Let's go raise some funds and try and get another centre-back in at the end of the window. It should have been, get the centre-back in, get the goalkeeper in, and then it's like, okay, can we raise funds for these other players that are maybe just, if they're important, but they're not absolutely critical to having a, competent team on the pitch.
And
I think you could argue, though, that Maddison kind of is, even though he wasn't, the priority was centre halves and a goalkeeper. He's still, like, for the new manager, we didn't have anyone vaguely in the Maddison mould. So, and the opportunity isn't going to be as with Newcastle's interest and stuff. I kind of think he had to go for that, especially at that price. But it's.
And I think this thing about let's be honest, we're not very good at moving players on. We're not. We don't have a good history at it. But it's not just as easy. When you see it all over Twitter, just get rid of these players, just get rid of those players. It's not that easy to out Tanguy and Ndombele when he's on 200 grand a week and he's a fat old fuck. Jesus. Do you know what I mean? You can't just out him. You can knock him down to 10 million and people ain't going to take him because they ain't going to pay his 200 grand a week.
Yeah.
And he ain't going to go anywhere. He's got a contract that pays him 200 grand a week to sit on his fat one doing fuck all.
I think the issue is everyone looks at Chelsea and it's got to be said, they're doing a fantastic job offloading all their excess players. But I was reading an article earlier today about Man United and how they're struggling to get rid of a lot of their unwanted players. So we're not the only ones that are struggling to
No.
move players on.
Well, they would out Sancho if they had a chance.
Yeah.
They were talking about Sancho for 40 million. What they pay? They paid 7. Did they pay 90 for him? Or
They played something
Yeah, but
stupid.
it's his wages, so I think that he should. He's on
that's the point.
350k a week.
That's the point we were just making. It's not just as easy. You got all the fan base going. Just shift these players. Just get rid of them. Just move them on. Well,
Cancel
you
their
can't just
contracts.
move them. You can't just cancel someone's contract. Well, you have to pay it up for starters if you're going to cancel
20
it.
million. Exactly.
Do you know what I mean? Oh yeah, throw that about, and then we get into an argument about, well, we haven't got any money. Well, no, because we've just cancelled the contract for 20 million.
Yeah,
It's not that simple.
it's also quite funny. Just on a bit on that, and it's a little bit of a side to it. But with Sancho, the links were just always laughable because it was like, in what world are Tottenham going to pay someone 350k a week? And that's a prime example of how much Man United have siloed themselves into not being able to remove this guy in the same way we have with Ndombele, because the only 4 or 5 clubs in the world who can afford him have far better players, and they don't need to worry about risking it on someone like Ndombele. So, yeah, he's getting another chance whether he wants it or not. I'm sure he'd love us, that guy, to cancel his contract. But let's give him a chance. I think Ange is going to be very quick to say, like, sod off. If you don't want to,
he'll be sent on loan somewhere.
If anyone can motivate him, it's this guy. So let's see how it goes. I also want to talk about another player we signed out of nowhere, which just goes to show as well how much the board has, or the club as a whole, seems to have plugged leaks. Because one, journalists are spouting out way more kind of generic articles on Tottenham because they can't fill it with transfer news. Solomon was linked about a month ago, and then it went silent for a month, and then suddenly he appears out of the blue, and no one knew it was coming. What do we know about this guy, Deej? I know we obviously played for Fulham, so we do know him. We've seen him play a bit, but he wasn't a player I was thinking, I'm going to really pay attention to him, and I'm not going to go drag up the archives and start going over all his stuff. But did anyone track him much in the past? Anyone think he's a good signing? Is he more a 2.0, or is he better than that?
It's kind of so basically the reason that it's really weird to kind of profile Solomon is because of the whole situation surrounding Shakhtar Donetsk as a whole. So him coming to Fulham on a free transfer is that would not have happened if he was at Ajax or something and performing like he was performing at Shakhtar. He was a couple of years ago a pretty highly touted 21-year-old, and then obviously the whole thing started that I don't really want to talk about it, but he ends up coming to Fulham, and he has, for a pretty non-trivial injury. I don't think that he has an injury history outside of this, but I think this kept him out for about 4 months. But since he came back, he's looked pretty good. I have a couple of friends who follow Fulham because, they had Dempsey back in the day. So some Americans still have a fond affiliation with them. And he's a very hardworking winger. Obviously, we've all seen his cut inside and score on his right, which is kind of the only goal he seems to score for Fulham. But his main draw, I think, is that he's a very much a player you want if you want to defend from the front, which seems to be what Ange wants to do. So even if he's not going to be a starter, and if I'm being honest, I don't think he'll ever be a starter, but he is the kind of person that if we're up a goal, we're down a goal, you want to just pester the opponent's back line, you just bring him on. And I'm more than happy with it for a free transfer, low risk. And it's not like we're signing some random nobody.
And it's a 5-year deal, right? So the club must see something. They must see some sell-on value there for 5 years. There's no reason, there's no amortization got to go on here on a free transfer, is it?
Well, yeah, unless he's just low wages as well, and it's that low risk that they're like. As someone said, well, there were two funny comments on him in the WhatsApp group we've got. One was someone said, "Look, he's 22. He's only going to get better." Then someone replied with a picture of Dele Alli, and I thought that was quite. I think it was HG actually.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
HG.
Yeah, I thought that was pretty funny. But the other side is like, look, maybe the club's just like, look, he's free, he's squad depth, he ticks most of the boxes, and we can just flog him off next year if it doesn't work, and it's a little bit of money towards Sons, Air, or something like that.
I looked on Transfermarkt today and had a look at him. They have him at a market value of just around about 20 million. Which, as a backup squad player, that's probably where our league is at the moment, right? A decent backup winger.
Yeah. I mean, he wasn't actually technically free. He cost us a friendly game. Club, but sorry, go on, John.
It's still got to get verified by FIFA as well, I think, doesn't it, at the moment?
I'm just presuming that the fact that we've done the friendly means that any kind of behind-the-scenes deals have probably been done so that they're not going to kick up a fuss with FIFA.
Just looking
because it's too much of a coincidence to think that we've done the friendly and then signed him.
I'm just wondering where this leaves Brian Heal's situation, though. But because obviously he would be more on the left as well.
I read he can play anywhere across the front, so right, centre, and left. Yeah,
he's right-footed, isn't he?
Yeah,
he is right-footed. Yeah, he is.
Yeah.
He plays predominantly on the left and cuts inside, but he could play on the right. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
and I mean, if we're going to be this high press, high energy, you're going to need to be able to even if we're only playing once a week, or we're not in Europe, you're still going to have to rotate the players effectively in when the cup games come around, etc. You're going to have to. So
don't play that side.
It also means that there's the chances of re-signing Danjuma have gone from 2% to 0%. It's any other small thing. Yeah. So
I think that just one more thing. I think that like a lot of, there's been obviously some negative kickback as there's for any signing that we make about this being the cheap option. But like the way that I look at it is this is a Lucas replacement. This is not a Son replacement. This is kind of a Danjuma replacement. But this is primarily a Lucas replacement. This is the person that you bring on to provide a spark of energy in the second half, which hopefully we start making some subs before the 80th minute. One of the many things that I'm looking forward to next season. But like, we could have gone out and signed like one of the better wingers like Loriente or Nico Williams or one of those, like someone that type of player. Yeah. But we have way bigger issues right now, namely center back. So I do not mind signing this player who fulfills a role that we kind of need. We lost that player, and let me tell you, I am fairly certain that anybody would be better than Lucas was for that incredible run of form where he cost us about 9 points in 3 games. But so it can't get worse realistically, and this also because he's not a high wage, assuming he's not a high wage player, not a high wage, not a high transfer fee, we will have no issues going to someone in a year or two's time and saying, hey, we've got this shiny new left wing spot just for you. And that'll make buying Son's eventual replacement much easier.
We as fans need to get out of this like mentality that the smaller clubs have as well, which is kind of like we're getting so uptight about these small things, thinking that this now means we're never going to sign a proper centre back because we signed a guy on a free. Other clubs are like, don't care, get them all in. Get as many guys as you can, just fill the change room up with really, really good talent and figure out which ones are best on the pitch. And if someone's development is hindered because they don't get to play, I don't give a shit. I just want to win trophies and have the best players in my team as possible. So maybe we should see it as a positive. We're stuffing the squad with good players despite it already being stuffed with Deadwood. That is going to be playing with the under-21s unless it's sold. So, guys, I just wanted to, I haven't got too long, so we need to finish up in a bit, but would it be good to finish up on Ange's interviews? He's done a couple recently.
Yeah.
They were.
Love him.
I'm in love. Yeah.
Ange!
Well,
Come to me, baby.
Johnny called it from the beginning.
Yes, he did.
He did.
Actually did.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, I did. Oh, yeah, I might have done, yeah.
Credit to...
Didn't put a bet on it, unfortunately, though. Oh,
In
my
March,
betting
we all as a
record.
podcast aligned that this guy was the right fit, not because of his tactics, but because of his personality, and that he is the guy to take a bit of a loser's mentality and bring in a winning mentality to the club. And he's showing that he may well bring that aura with him after all. Anyone want to comment on the interviews? Anything particular he said that got you guys, interested?
I suppose the thing that I didn't really know that much about until the last couple of days was just the new staff that he's brought in. And obviously some questions, because I think initially he was quite keen to go against what he usually does and bring a few of the Celtic lads with him. But the Celtic weren't going to play ball on that front, which, it still looks like a really good lineup. He's got a really nice blend of three fellas who've been working in the Spurs Academy. Obviously Ryan Mason amongst them, but Matt Wells, I think it is, he's worked with Mason for years, and then the goalkeeper coach as well. And then there's the other two guys from outside of the club. There was a really interesting interview Sky did with Chris Davies. He's just been did a tour of 5 clubs in 5 countries over the last few months, just learning about the different methods they use and the culture, the mentality, the how they play, how they train, how they recover, all of those sorts of things. So it's just, I guess that when you see that, and then there's Jedinek, the Australian captain that played under Ange and obviously has got Premier League playing experience. So it's a really good blend there, I think. And I like the comment that Pochettino, Postecoglou said, "Oh my God, I can't believe
it's a Freudian slip."
Yeah, exactly. Oh, sorry, boys. That Ange, I'll just stick with Ange. That, he said. Apparently, he said he likes working with new people, and the challenges that working with new people bring him as a person. And he made a sort of tongue-in-cheek reference to the fact that apparently he's getting a bit old, which is obviously quite one of the initial criticisms that were being pointed at the top, not appointing these young dynamic manager. But I think actually his wisdom and his experience and his ability to recognize the fact that, actually having the contrast of personalities, that blend of in-club knowledge and understanding of what Tottenham's about, but also other guys with amazing ambition themselves, who've got, it sounds like Chris Davies has got a real future ahead of him in management. And that's what I'm most excited about from
me too
this week.
There's the modern approach to the backroom staff, whereas I feel like Conte brought his men he's always had for ages, and even with Poch, it was like Jesus. Jesus was like, he's my best mate. That seemed to be the logic. It's like he's a good guy and he does what I tell him to do, and he's really passionate. But it seems like Ange is like, I'm not here to make friends or appoint my mates. I employ different people wherever I go, depending on who are the right people for the job at hand. And I'm going to paint you guys as we need to end, I want to paint you guys a beautiful scenario, which is going to happen on the 4th of November when we play Chelsea at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. We're 4-0 up in the 80th minute, singing Ange Postecoglou, his magic, as Poch sits in his seat, looking down at his feet, shuffling awkwardly, and there's an article the next morning to say he's fighting for his future.
With Jedinek just stroking his beard.
Yes, off to Turkey you go, Poch. You're done.
My worry about Jedinek is that if anything happens to that beard, I think it's a sort of Samson type scenario. If it goes, that's the source of all his power. And it's a magnificent beard, but if it goes, we're in trouble. But it is magnificent. It is. But the thing about, and I know we've got to go and wrap up, but the thing that's got me about these interviews is he's talked about how important things are for us as fans. He's talked about, he's used we quite a lot. We need to do this. We need to. It's not like Conte. The club knows my opinion. Talking about himself being detached from the club. Oh, fuck off, mate. We've got a guy here now who is fully invested. I think there's a balance between he's come here because he knows he can do a job and he can do a job, but he's also recognising the fact that it's a step up and he needs to perform and he's not doing us a favour. But by the same extent, he's not going to take any bullshit, I don't think. You get that feeling from him. And that's why I plumped for the season ticket this season. So I'm up near you, Johnny. up in the
Yeah,
east.
bring it
I've had to
on.
take it in the east. I couldn't get one in the south, but I've had to take it in the east. But that sounds a bit wrong, isn't it? I took it in the east.
You should have taken the south, mate.
Yeah.
At least I didn't take it up the north. Yeah, so I feel good about next season. Really good.
Just
I think that my favorite part of and all of this Ange content we've kind of gotten since he's been officially our manager isn't actually from an interview he did. It's the thing from the Maddison one where he called Maddison and he said, whether or not you come, you're going to see a different Tottenham. And I thought that's the mentality that we need. And I don't know. I'm ready to get hurt again.
It's interesting because he sort of whenever I was talking about my eldest lad about the appointment, and he was like really skeptical, and the whole kind of easy dismissing of somebody coming from Scottish Premier League, and his worry was about the effect he would have in bringing in players, and because he's not a name and all of that kind of thing. But it actually seems that the things that we recognise and we've celebrated about his personality have just made a really big impression, even on like really established players. And I'd love to be flying the wall when he has the chat with Harry Kane on the 12th of July when he comes back. So I think Harry Kane would be really open to listening to
That's what I was going to say. Because, I mean, the word is getting stronger and stronger that Kane is talking to Bayern, or at least his camp is talking to Bayern. So that conversation next week, I would love to be a fly on the wall.
Oh yeah,
his brother's out there. That's as far as it's got. He's having a curry first outside.
Bratwurst.
Don't worry, guys.
yeah.
As long as Charlie's on the case, he's never leaving.
No,
exactly.
Do you think the conversation will be different with Ange and Kane as it was? We saw Jose's on the documentary, which was you need to be up there with the world's best, winning the Ballon d'Or. I feel like Conte would have been something like that, and I'm the guy to take you there. But I feel with Ange it'll be kind of like, are you in this project? Are you seriously committed to this project?
Yeah.
And if it gets any kind of like, I don't know, or I'm, maybe I'm like, you're lucky to have me, I think he'll just go knock on Daniel's door and say, this guy's not in on it. I know you want to keep him, but he's not in on it. I don't want him in the dressing room. It'll be, but if Kane reacts positively, obviously that's the best outcome for all of us.
Absolutely.
That's just all based on conjecture. But
I just can't see Ange making him captain if he's not bought into the project, because it just doesn't make any sense.
So then, just to round it off, then who's captain next season? Everyone's fully fit. Who's captain?
We've got no to caveat this with. There's no great option.
Think it should be. I think it should. I would give it to Son. Honestly,
he does for South Korea.
For the amount that he has done for our club, both in like the Nuno contract extension, which no idea why he did that, and then coming out and actually saying I don't want to go to Saudi Arabia and shooting down rumors where certain other members of our squad will never ever do that. I don't know. And also because he seemed from everything that comes out about it, he seems to be like the new player liaison for a lot of new players. I think that he I would give it to him.
Yeah.
But
it's a good show.
Yeah, I think I might go Bentancur.
That would have been my other option.
At the base of that midfield, I think he sees a lot of the game. I think him. Yeah, so
I'd agree.
Sonny could be a good shout. Bentancur could be a good shout for me as well.
I'd go with Bentancur, but I don't think he'll be fit.
No, he won't for the start of the season. He won't. I don't think you'll see him about October. I think.
Yeah, I agree. I think it should be if Kane goes, it's Bentancur captain and Son vice. If Kane stays, I think it's inevitable that's when it gets complicated, doesn't it?
Yeah,
that's what I think. Yeah. But anyway, up the Spurs, guys. We've got a magical few seasons ahead of us, I'm sure, and we're finally going to win something. Not this year, but maybe next year. Next year we're going to win.
Ange!
Come on, Ange!
Up the Spurs.
Up the Spurs.